let me just jump into it. And it's actually taken from the best-selling book from a best-selling author named Troy. You know what I should have put on here is Troy D. Gramling. Does that make it sound like I'm more
Yes,
important?
100%. You also should have added another person. I like books where there were two authors.
Oh, okay. Well, I can put your name on the next one.
Oh, please.
Troy D. and Carson C. No.
Carson C.
Carson L.
Carson
It doesn't have the same.
No. Troy
Nah.
D. and Carson.
L.
No. What?
Yeah.
B.
Oh,
Carson B.
you gave me my middle name, so you'd have to change it.
Yes. Anyways, Carson Lee.
Oh.
Ooh.
There you go. Anyways, I'm taking it exactly from the book, page 166 and 167. And I just real quickly wanted to talk about the relationship between Joshua and Moses, because that is about raising up the next generation or mentoring people or discipling people or raising up leaders. Today, what do they call it today? They call it like a master class, right? You know, all those kind of things about. And Joshua was the assistant to Moses. So first, we'll talk about Joshua, and then we'll quickly talk about Moses, okay? But if I want to be a Joshua, in other words, I want to, because remember, Joshua was the assistant who became the leader, who actually led them in to the promised land, right? He finished the job. He took them to that next level. And I know there's a lot of us who, you know, we want to we feel called to do something, to lead something, to start something, to be a part of something. And often we get a dream, we get a vision, we get even, if you think of scripturally, a word from God without a vision, that means a revelation or, you know, what's my destiny, before the opportunity comes. And so the first thing that we see in Joshua's life, and even secular people would say that Moses was an incredible leader. And one of the reasons is because his assistant was gifted enough and effective enough to lead them into the promised land. And the first thing Joshua was is he was patient. And that is one of the hardest things, isn't it? Is when you've got a dream, and whether that dream is to get that promotion or to get that opportunity or to get that loan to start that business or get that investor, whatever it is, patience is difficult. Joshua waited decades. He was an assistant for decades. And it would have been so easy to say, Moses is never going to give me an opportunity. And yet, he is the one who accomplished the goal, right? I mean, so much of the scripture, when you think about Exodus all the way to Joshua, right? And Joshua is the one that did that. But in order to experience that, he had to be patient. We all think we know more than we do, especially when we're young. And there's a lot to learn when it comes to leading. There's a lot to learn when it comes to figuring out, you might say, or experiencing perseverance, going through the difficulties and learning, how do I deal with the difficulties? How do I deal with discouragement? How do I not give up? The one thing, you know, I even talked about it this weekend, if you want to check it out on potentialchurch.com, is that or the YouTube page, is about how it's so easy to not persevere, right? That discouragement means without courage. And so we got to be patient. And I want to say that. It sounds so simple, and people don't like to hear patience, but it's important to learn what you need to learn so you can succeed at what you feel called to do, what you dream of accomplishing. And whether that's learning through school, you know, a lot of times they say going to college is not what you learn from the book, but it's what you learn from the experience that helps you to succeed as you pursue your dream. Not only was he patient, but secondly, while he was being patient, he was loyal. There's this couple of guys in the scripture, Eldad and Madad, and they started prophesying. And Joshua is afraid that, you know, they're getting in Moses' way, or that in some way they're dishonoring Moses. So what does Joshua immediately do? He goes to Moses and he says, Moses, you need to make these guys quit. Now, Moses wasn't intimidated by him. He even said, I wish there were more of me. But what's interesting is you see Joshua's loyalty. He could have easily, joined them, or he could have, took authority that he didn't necessarily have and tried to step into that. There's a lot of things he could have done, but one thing he did do is he showed that he was loyal. He wanted his leader to succeed. Therefore, his leader could trust him with the vision. And one of the sure ways, if you want opportunity, is to make sure that whoever your leader is, whether that's the manager, the CEO, the pastor, the parent, if you're wanting more opportunities, right, to some family business or whatever it might be, is to not only be patient, but while you're being patient, is not looking for opportunities to go around the leader or manager or to stab them in the back, right, or to talk about them, because you're going to see things they don't see. And you can either bring those things to the leader and help the leader succeed, or you can take those things to somebody else in hopes that, you can take their position. And then the last thing is just he had a hunger for opportunity. He climbed the mountain. With Moses, when Moses went up to get the 10 Commandments, he was one of the 12 who went in to spy out the land. And I know in my own life, I've experienced that as well. When we first came here, it was a sense of being patient and looking for opportunities. And I was here to do young adults, but the biggest opportunity was to be in the parking lot. The opportunity to be around the executive team was every Monday night they got together and they watched football. I'm a basketball person. I've never really been involved in football or engaged that much in football. It wasn't a big sport in our town. But every Monday night, I found myself wherever they were meeting, to watch those football games so that I could be around them. I could learn from them. I could take advantage of whatever opportunities I heard, right? I might hear them talking about how we need somebody to do this or we need somebody to do that. And I'm just telling you, your manager, your leader, your supervisor, your CEO is always looking to see who's looking for opportunity versus who's complaining about the lack of opportunity. So you can succeed. You can be a Joshua, but you got to be patient, you got to be loyal, and you got to be hungry for opportunity. Well, what about if you're the Moses, right? How do you raise up the next generation? And in the book, I talk about the great basketball coach, John Wooden. And I even had it hanging. It's now in the worship green room, but it says how John Wooden said, you can use young men to build a great basketball team, or you can use basketball to build great young men. And I think this thing is true. The same thing is true no matter what you're doing. In ministry, it's like we can use people to try to build a big church or a great church, or we can use the ministry to build people. And so kind of partnering, you might say, with John Wooden, here's just a couple of things to do if you're the Moses in the situation. The first thing is probably the most challenging, and it's just to check your ego. Right? I wrote down, Joshua's success wasn't a threat to Moses. Right? You got to check your ego. And John Maxwell used to say this, it's like you really determine how good a leader you are when you're not there. Right? It's like, hey, let's say you're going to New York and Daystar for a week, and when you come back, is there no audio to the video you're doing, right? That reveals what kind of leader, not that they are, but what kind of leader are you? In other words, are you empowering, raising up, and building in people so that they can succeed when you're not there? Or does our ego get in the way where we almost want them to do bad when we're not there to show how much we're needed? Right? But that's not true leadership. That's more selfishness. You want your family, you want your business, you want your ministries to do well when you're not there, because that says then you've equipped people in order to be able to succeed. The other thing that me and Brother Wooden talked about, in the book, is give people an opportunity to succeed and to fail. And that's the hardest thing to do as a leader. That's the hardest thing for me. Right? If I see something going in the wrong direction, I immediately want to step in and correct it. And sometimes you have to let people feel the sting of failure, right? The consequences of not doing well. And you got to weigh, what's going to be the cost of that, right? Is the business going to go under? Then you're probably going to want to step in. But I don't know if there's anything really more important to learn than to learn how to deal with failure. Because if you don't figure it out, you get really discouraged, and then you give up. And everybody's going to fail, however you want to define that, right? Something you plan's not going to go right. You're not going to be prepared for something. The other one that I jotted down is to get to know the people, not just the people, what the people do. In other words, hang out. I enjoy, like before this, or when I'm doing a podcast and other opportunities just to kind of hang out and hear the different stories that people tell and what's going on in their life. And so you want to know what inspires people so you can best, motivate them. You can add value to them. And that's hard to do if you don't know them at all. And while you can't know everybody, that doesn't mean you don't need to know anybody, right? And then just two more here is teach the why, not just the what. And it's always quicker to teach just the what. I need you to do this. But if you don't teach the why, then there's not an understanding, right? Then it's more difficult for somebody to succeed when you're not there. Because if I don't know the why, then I might not know the what if you're not there to tell me what the what is. And as a leader, it's always easier just to share the what. The why takes longer, right? To grasp, okay, the reason it's so important that we start on time, right? Not just that we start on time, but it's so important that we start on time because we're trying to teach the value of what we're doing. We're trying to give confidence to those who show up that they're going to, right? All of whatever it is that we're doing, you want to take the time that's necessary to do the best that you can to share, here's why we're doing it. And that helps people not only understand the vision, but it helps them to think for themselves. It's like in a service, you got songs, you got video, you got spoken word, you got teaching, you got all these things. And I think it's important if you're running the sound or you're doing the slides to understand why we're doing this song here or why we're doing this video, what it is we're trying to accomplish. So if the video doesn't work, then whoever's going to come out and share the announcement is not just saying words, but they're helping you to accomplish the goal. And a lot of times we probably all heard announcements that are just words, people just talking. But you can tell that the person that's talking doesn't understand why the words they're saying are actually important. In other words, what they're actually trying to accomplish. We're not just trying to get people to bring trunks, right? Right? Why are we asking people to do trunks at Trunk or Treat? Well, because we want them to experience the joy of ministry. We want them to feel the sense of fulfillment that they're ministering to their community. We want them to see that there are thousands of people that can be reached that'll show up at one time. We want them to experience the impact of their financial giving and how giving makes a difference. We want them to see what happens when we had so many people, we ran out of candy, right? All of those kind of things. It's not just we need people to do trunks so we can do Trunk or Treat. Because then if the video that's trying to recruit people doesn't show, or the person who's making the announcement's not there, then the other person's going to come out and say words. And they're not going to be near as effective in doing so. And then lastly, is empower, but don't abandon. Who is it? The guy that wrote, I forget his name. Did I write his name? I didn't. But he wrote a book talked about seagull leadership. And some of us are either all involved or not involved. And if we're going to raise up people, mentor people, then it's important. Seagull leadership's when you come in, you make a bunch of noise like a bunch of seagulls, and you kind of poop all over everybody, and then you fly away, right? That's what seagulls do. They come in, they squawk, they make a bunch of noise, they poop over everything, and then they fly away. And sometimes as leaders, we do that. We come in, and we make a bunch of noise, and we say a bunch of things that need to be done, that's not done right? And then we're just gone. And so it's learning the skill to empower without abandoning. Right? So that you're giving people the weight and the responsibility to do something, but at the same time, they don't feel as if you don't care about what they're doing. And that's not easy. And that takes time to learn that skill. And it takes an intentionality because you can do it. I can do it one time and not do it the next. I can get in a hurry, right? And I just fly in and fly out, and that person feels abandoned. And that's not a great way to raise up a Joshua. So whether you're Joshua or you're Moses, there's a few thoughts in how you can be successful as a leader on this week's Soul Session.